Welcome to our workshop on hosting. First question I'm sure on everybody's mind is who should you host with? Now we obviously host with HostGator and have for a while now, but we've tried many different hosts over the time that we've been in business. And unlike domain names where you can sort of pretty much host with most domain name companies without too many problems, we've had no end of problems with different hosting companies. One of the first questions I should address though is where should you host? As far as if you're targeting Australia, should you host with an Australian company or at least on Australian servers, or should you host in the US? This has been a bit of a question that you read around in forums, and one I guess I should address, and one we actually answered for ourselves in the last 12 months. We normally hosted with HostGator, which is in the US, but we target Australia. We thought, well, why not try an Australian host again? We hadn't done that for quite a few years because of the expense and the dramas involved with the Australian hosts that we had been working with. We thought surely things have improved, and we can tell whether or not we get any advantage by having our website hosted in Australia. And unequivocally, the answer was it just was not worth the hassle. It was way more expensive. The service was pretty much terrible, and we've tried about 4 different Australian hosts now over the years. They've all been fairly atrocious. It was actually a lot slower. The sites were slower than when we were hosted on the US, which is usually the reason why people say you might get an advantage from hosting in the host country. And basically, it just was not worth it. So, where should you host? You host with the best host that you can. It doesn't really matter which country it's in. And I know there's a lot of hosting companies out there that if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but that's just our experience. And there are some particularly amazing hosts, I think, in America. They seem to be a lot more advanced than some of the other hosts out there, and we like HostGator. There's also Bluehost, seems to be another popular one that we know some other people that host with Bluehost quite happily. But for the purposes here, because we use HostGator, they're the ones that we use, and we always promote what we're actually using for our sites. We're going to show you how to set up hosting with them today. How much should it cost? Well, for our purposes, it certainly shouldn't cost you anything more than say $100 per year. And while a lot of the hosting companies will give you a by the month cost initially, it's usually based on a certain period. In other words, if you register for 2 or 3 years, you'll get it on a lower monthly cost. Our recommendation is to go for 1 year, particularly for a new site, because if you haven't given it a year, then you haven't really given your site a real shot. But if after a year it's not doing very well, it's not ranking at all, then you really don't want to be stuck with hosting costs for another year. So a year is around about perfect. What do you need to look for in a host? Basically, have a look around and see what other people are using. There are forums that you can go to. You can look for reviews on the host. Again, I would stick with ones that get great reviews, and particularly not just from a cost perspective, but also from a service perspective. When you have an issue, you want to know that you can go and very quickly get service and an actual help. For example, I can tell you we had an issue with HostGator a few months ago, just we couldn't access our site. And it was a little bit concerning because it was just our site's administration panels we couldn't access. So went to HostGator, and within about 10 minutes they told me that they'd done all these checks and they'd done the trace route back to our internet provider and discovered that it was our internet provider's fault. But they gave us a full report that we could then present to our internet provider, which we did, and had the problem solved very quickly. So it's that kind of level of service is one of the reasons why we stick with HostGator, and I wouldn't really accept anything less anymore. So let's go over to HostGator's site. There's a link below this video that'll take you there, and we can have a look at some of their plans and what you're looking for in a plan. So here we are at HostGator.com. We're just going to view web hosting plans and just see what they have. You can see here they've got a hatchling plan, a baby plan, a business plan. One of the I think problems people face when they're first looking at an e-commerce hosting is they're concerned that they really need something great because it's a business and it's going to need a more expensive plan, and that's just not the case. Some of these smaller plans will do you just fine. Depending on how far you want to go with our particular model, which involves creating multiple sites, in other words, you make one site successful and then you might move on to a few others. You probably want to have a look at the baby plan. You can see the big difference here is in the plans is we've got a single domain here and unlimited domains in the baby plan. If you just want to have one site and that's your total plan and you don't really have any plans on doing any others, then this hatchling plan is actually fine. Unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth. You can also upgrade your plan later on if you need to anyway to a baby plan and just add the unlimited domains. This is actually the plan that we use, and we have quite a few sites, both e-commerce sites and more, and we have no problems. As previously mentioned, just the year is fine. You can see obviously you can it goes down if you order 3 years, but really at this point in time you're just, unless you already have some other sites that you want to transfer over and they're good solid sites, and you just want to start with the 1 year plan, which I think works out to be around about $96 a year, which is fine. When it comes to the matter of security, we'll deal with this later on down the track. You can actually add security certificates to these sites. I think it works out to be about $50 per site per year. There's a reason why we don't necessarily worry about this too much. We'll tell you when we build the site. This is mostly because we carry all of our secure transactions off-site using PayPal, and as such we don't actually process any credit card information or payment information on our actual sites themselves, which can be spun as a bonus to your customers as well. But it's a cheap and easy way of doing it, and we have had no problems with conversions by going down this path. So to order the plan, all we need to do is, that's pretty straightforward from now. If you've already ordered your domain, this is great. You can just put your domain in here. If you haven't yet, you can always add it later. We're going to go through a little bit later in this particular presentation and show you how you take your GoDaddy domain and basically point it at your new site. This will become important later down the track as you add more sites. But it sounds like it's complicated, but it's not. It's pretty easy. Change to 12 months. You'll need a username, a security PIN, like in your credit card details. And again, this is where they'll all do this. They'll all try to add all these extras that you just don't need any of them. And click the checkbox and create account, and that'll go through and get you your registration. And that's it. So what we're going to go do now is show you how to add a domain to your site. And to do that, you need to register into the control panel for your new hosting account. To find that information, you'll have been sent an email after you register with HostGator containing all of your control panel details, as well as name server account details. So make sure to keep an eye out for that email before we go into the next workshop. Now, after you've registered your first hosting with HostGator, you'll get an email, and it will have your account information, including a link to your control panel. It'll also have other information like name server 1 and name server 2. Don't get too caught up in the technical details of that. You'll just need that information a little bit later. Click on the link to your control panel. It'll also have your username and password. So once the link will look something a little bit like this. You can see up in the URL bar here, gator1821.hostgator.com. Some of the numbers might be a little bit different, but that's what the link will look like. Put in your username and password and log in. What this is going to take us to is the backend control panel for our hosting, with a whole lot of stuff that you don't need to worry about. So again, if you're new to all this, don't freak out too much. Okay, if we go down, you'll see under domains, add-on domains. The relationship between a domain name and a hosting account is such that the domain name is simply just the link that people put in their browser that then guides them to the website that is stored on your hosting account. Because we've created a domain name over on GoDaddy.com, and now we've created our hosting on HostGator, just because GoDaddy does a lot more different types of domains and also is a bit cheaper. We now need to tell the domain where the website is, and we now need to tell the website about the domain as well. So here in the HostGator control panel under the add-on domain section, all we do is type in the domain that we created, which was doorknobshq.com.au, and type in a password and then retype in that password, click add domain, let it think for a little bit, and that's it. So now you've told HostGator to start. It's created a bit of an account. It's created a space on the server for your site, ready to go. Now we need to go tell GoDaddy where it can find the actual website, and we're going to do that using those name servers that were in that email that's been sent to you. So now we're going to go over to GoDaddy.com and log in to our GoDaddy account. So here we are back at GoDaddy.com where we first registered our domain name. Up the top left here you can see we can put in our account number and our password, which you will have been given when you first registered the domain name. So enter that and click the login button, and that will log you in. Click My Account up the top left. This will take you to your administration panel, and here we can see domains. If we open that, there's doorknobshq.com.au that we just registered. Going to launch. This will actually launch the administration panel for this particular domain, and ignore all the other confusing information, and down here we can see name servers and set name servers. In this new panel we get the option to say I have specific name servers for my domains, and this is where you want to get rid of the ones that are already here, and go back to your HostGator email that came through and it had name server 1 and name server 2. Yours will be different from the ones I've just entered, but they will look very, very similar. Click OK, validating, submitting. It says these changes usually take 2 hours up to 48 hours. In our experience between GoDaddy and HostGator, these tend to happen almost instantly, but it can vary for different people, so don't be surprised if it does take a little while. Click OK, and we can log out. And that's done now. You've told your domain name on GoDaddy where your website should be, and you've told HostGator to look out for your domain name, and they'll get together, they'll do the wild thing, and everything will be happy. And that's the end of this workshop.
Thanks for watching this Talking Business workshop. If you enjoyed it, then hit like, or better yet, if you know someone that could benefit greatly from this video, share it with them. All the tools that we mentioned, whether they're paid or free, are listed below, and sometimes we get some pretty good deals on them, so be sure to use our links. If you want more workshops, head back to talkingbusiness.com. But if you need the blueprint, grab yourself a copy of our book, Retail Rebellion. And we'll see you next time.